it's Guido coming at you with a review now of the Tier 7 FSV Scheme A, the Tier 7 wheeled British medium tank. A sniper medium tank, as Wargaming puts it. Finished up the grind in this thing. I did have to grind out, I think, one of the modules, or a piece of one of the modules. Not a piece, but one of the modules. And then I ran out of free experience. That happened pretty quickly though, because I had some ×5s. As you can see, it only took me 23 battles to get through this entire tank, and I think maybe one module. We averaged 900 experience, which is decent for a Tier 7. 43% win rate's not fantastic, but that's on 23 games. It took me a little while to kind of get used to this thing, even though I had played the 6 and the 5. You start talking about getting a little bit in the higher tiers, and the idea of these tanks gets more difficult to do well in, I would say. However, that being said, it's probably a personal problem, because I just looked at how it's doing currently in the stats, and it's doing really well. If it'll stay there or not, that's a good question, because it's a new tank, but it's still kind of an interesting development in my opinion. We'll take a look at it in a minute. 1.29 damage, destruction 2.62. Look at that armor use efficiency at 0.05, extremely low. It just really doesn't have any. As I said earlier, averaging 900 experience is decent at Tier 7. I'll take it. The closer to 1,000 that is, the better. Damage caused to enemy vehicles 1,000, which is low for my Tier 7 mediums. But the assistance is about double, and that has a lot to do with the way I was playing it and the way I have it set up. So we'll talk about that when we get there. I did have an ace battle with 3,429 damage. This says 2,454, but it was a 1,600 experience game. I think this one takes into account your premium stuff. And we got 5 kills in that battle. So kind of interesting result right there. Did pretty well in it. Low DPN or DPG, damage per game, but a relatively high assist level. Like I said, some of that has to do with the way I have it set up. I've got vents. I'm running vision here with the coated optics. Neither one of those is bounty or special. The vents are in the bonus slot, and I'm running, because I haven't used these much, but I've got the mobility improvement system. Unfortunately, it's only a Tier 2. The Tier 3 is on my Tier 8 tank, because I have unlocked the Saladin. So this has given me a smorgasbord here. There was a recent video by, I think, Dez. I hope I didn't get it wrong on who it was. I believe it was Dez. Maybe it was somebody else. But they did a comparison on all of the different turbos. And the fact of the matter is, as long as you've got some kind of turbo on, you're getting a pretty good bonus. And there's a bit of a law of diminishing returns as you put the more expensive ones on. Yes, they are faster. They will get you there quicker, but the difference is maybe not as much as you would think. So I said, you know, that being true, let's start using some of this experimental equipment, because this thing's given me a +6% and a +5, I believe, or +4, sorry, to top forward speed, +5 if I upgrade it to a Tier 3. So that's not bad at all. Plus I get all the other little bonuses, right? A little extra engine power, turret traverse, hull traverse. That's very important for this tank. A little bit of extra help on dispersion while moving. So all very cool. So I'm delving in a little bit into the experimental stuff. I carried 30 regular rounds, 15 APCR. So this is probably the more fascinating piece of this tank. All of them have pretty good penetration, but this thing's rocking a 185 with its standard round. That's crazy. And if you spend a whole bunch more silver to shoot, you only get 20 or 35 more pen, up to 220, which is decent, but will struggle against some of the more heavily armed heavies at Tier 9 when you're 2 tiers down. Tier 7's a weird one. It's one of the tiers where if you're 2 tiers down and you're facing some of the 9s that are out there, you can be at a very, very distinct disadvantage, more so than usual being 2 tiers down. You might go, Guido, you're 2 tiers down. What are you talking about? I mean more so than the standard. But you've got some pen here, which is not bad. You got to like this standard pen at 185. That's actually pretty nice for a medium. Remember, it's a medium sniper tank. Yeah. Yep, right. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Some great feedback from you guys in the last 2 reviews. Talking a little bit, because in the last 2 reviews with the AEC and the whatever the Tier 6 one is, I can't even think of it right now. My opinion was that they don't really have a good place in the game. And a lot of people were saying, well, it's a medium sniper tank, which is Wargaming's classification. You can see it right here, and it kind of tells. They want you to have it to know its role according to them. I find that to be fine, and in general, I understand what they're talking about. It's a tank you don't want. You don't want to take this medium in and brawl necessarily. I mean, it just doesn't do that very well. It doesn't have the armor, doesn't have the mobility really, that kind of stuff. Doesn't have the angles on the armor. So, as far as if I wanted to go in and take on, say, a KV-13 face to face, or maybe a T-34-1 hover medium kind of idea, I probably really don't really want to do that kind of thing. So I get that. The roles are a generalization, and it does help you. But at the same time, there's then the reality of this game, how the game is played, the fact that a lot of times you kind of need to swing to other roles just based on the matchmaker, the map, the situation, the part of the match you're in, blah, blah, blah. So when you have a tank that has a little bit of armor and a decent gun and some mobility, that's kind of the thing you're looking for. And when you cast away one of those, i.e. the armor in this case, and then you go, well, it's mobile, but it's mobile in a straight line and it doesn't turn very well, then you start to get a tank that's tricky to use. So as I've said with the other two, it becomes more difficult to leverage the strengths of the tank because of the way the maps are built, the way the game is played, and everything else. So long story short on that, I understand the roles, and I get it when people say, well, Guido, it's a sniper medium tank. But at the same time, the reality, right, the way the game is actually played, brings in some significant shortcomings for these tanks. All right, FSV Schedule A, this is the Tier 7, as I said. This is a new crew right here. The crew I used with it has moved on to the Tier 8, to the Saladin. And this is the resultant crew I built out of just brand new guys. They've got brothers in arms. The other one that I did the 23 battles with, they had, like I said before, 4 skills or 3 skills working on their 4. So this is decent. As I'm doing the 100 Battle Challenge, this is now in the list of things to do down here. When to finish this thing up, we also need to do its field mods, all that good stuff. For the rest of the setup, I was running kits, and I did run Puddin and T for the whole thing. What did this give me on my setup? It gave me a 4.21 gun loading. It gave me a 1.58 aiming time, 21.38 on the average DPM, dispersion at 0.29. So this is a pretty accurate gun, fairly comfortable. The bummer is unusual for Brit tanks, other than, I guess, like the Churchill series. It has a horrible depression of -5, and that is a massive Achilles heel for a tank like this that's looking to get into positions, and then it has a nice fast reverse speed to back out. You only have -5. I found myself fighting the terrain a lot, so it's something to keep in mind when you're playing this tank. Unlike most of the rest of the line, it just has a really crap depression, and that's a little bit disappointing. Let's see. Nothing else really to note here other than the top speed of 64, so we've added 4 because of the mobility improvement system, the Tier 2 thing right there. There's that relatively low traverse speed going on. The camo I got out of it, and it was a little bit better with the other crew, and I don't think I have any camo on these guys yet. It looks like one guy has concealment 100%. So that'll get better, but that's not bad. 27 for stationary, that's fairly stealthy, and 21 is not too bad moving. Not too bad. It'd be nice if it was a light tank. I've mentioned that before, but it's not. It's a medium. So not too bad, and if you get the rest of the camo crew going on, that's going to improve those a little bit more. So then you can start talking about, like I mentioned earlier, the fact that I sort of ran this thing as a how would I say it? As a scout, essentially. I'm trying to think of a word that swing from scout to medium, I suppose. I can't even think of the word. Doesn't matter. It'll come to me later. It always does later on. Versatile. Thank you. That was it. Kind of a versatile medium to scout-ish thing. Of course, talking about Tier 7, where you're going to run into quite often, and I mentioned on the Tier 6, but even more so with Tier 7, you're going to run into people with a CVS. And that's a distinct disadvantage if you're trying to run a vision system or a setup, vision setup. And of course, the way I have this set up and the way I played it, that's where I get the extra assist. And probably, to some extent, less DPM or DPG because I was playing a little bit more passive, trying to be a scout type of guy. All right. So that's the setup. Let's take a look at the stats, actually. I wanted to mention this or show this to you guys because it did surprise me a bit over here. It is currently #1 in DPG. It's actually currently #1 in win rate, DPG, frags, assist, hit, pen. There's that nice pen going on. Spots. What? Crazy. Not blocked. Is it last? It's last in blocked. Fantastic. Not a surprise. And second in survival. So currently, the #1 with a bullet tier 7 medium tank in the game. That's the NA server. I don't know. Should we go look at the EU? Why not? Let's see what happens here. Tier 7 medium, is it the same story? All right, second there, DPG first, frags, yes, assist, this is not surprising me. Okay, all the way across the board, spots, the same thing, blocked, down to the bottom again, and survival, second. All right, early adopters, good players, more experience, blah, 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 blah. That was a surprise. I have to be very honest, that surprised me. I expected to find it top third, maybe in the middle, somewhere. That was my expectation based on my experience with it. But it appears to be doing quite well. We'll see what happens in a year, where it ends up. I don't suppose with such a good start, to be honest with you, that does bode well for it. It does indicate that it has some significant capabilities in the game, even as it's being played by the better players, more experienced, blah, blah, blah. Nobody knows how to play against it, all that kind of garbage. I don't think it drops anywhere near the bottom. It's middle of the pack to top 10, although there's not a whole lot of tanks over here, maybe 20 anyway, so you could be top 10 in this crew right here and still be in the middle. What's the real point of all that babble? It's pretty good. And I don't think that's going to change very much. And that surprised me because I've been hard on these tanks. And I don't hate them. I'm just trying to figure out how they work. And honestly, what it is at the end of the day is if you can keep alive to the middle to late game because of its mobility, even though it's not very agile, and its relative stealth and its pretty good spotting, which I did not mention, by the way. Its spotting is actually pretty good. This one I've got up to 469 with a spotting setup. Because it has all that stuff that good players can leverage, then it's going to be a game changer mid to late game. That's just the way it is. That's just the way the game is played and the way it is. Let's go take a look at some gameplay of the FSV Schedule A. I do have an Ace Tanker result. You'll have to go back a few days to check that out. I'm not going to include it here on this one. I'm going to give a more pedestrian result and talk a little bit about the struggles you might run into with this tank on some maps, just because some maps aren't built for this kind of tank, and you're going to have to be very careful how you play it. So that's the one I'll show. But if you're interested in an Ace Tanker, where I use a bit of a larger map and do a bunch of running around, check that out a few days ago. All right, let's go look at it. All right, I lied. Whatever. I forgot about the comparison. Let's just take a quick look here before we move on. I'm going to compare it with the Comet. I did this last time with the other British tanks at Tier 6 because the Cromwell is just such a fantastic tank, and it just outshined this thing in every way. The Comet, not exactly the same situation. A couple of these are sniper mediums. The KB-13 is an assault, and I think the Panther is a, I don't remember what they called that one, but anyway, firepower a little bit low as compared to the rest of these, although the DPM's not bad. We're at 1900, which is near the top, not quite as good as the Comet. There's that fantastic average penetration, although the Panther's got a little bit better with that long gun. 150 Alpha is, I thought it was low, but I didn't realize that there are a few of the Tier 7s, especially some of the newer ones like the Czech and whatnot, Polish, that hit hard. I think one of them has a 300 Alpha in there. The T20 was kind of the OG high Alpha Tier 7 medium. The rest of these are relatively low. So still, though, you're talking at 140 and 150 for the Brit stuff. Until you get to Tier 8, the Brit stuff, and even really the Tier 8s, to be honest, because there's Tier 8s that Brits have. There's Tier 8 heavies that do 240, I think, or 280. They just struggle a little bit on the Alpha until you get to the Death Star kind of idea. So the gun loading is okay, but not as fast as the Comet. That gives the Comet, a little bit better DPM. -5. Every time I see that, it's horrible. It's a little bit of a head scratcher, and it's one of the more fatal issues with this particular tank. Comet -12, these other guys 10. Although the KB-13's -5 is well known for terrible gun depression. You got to like the dispersion 0.32, best in class, other than I guess it's not as good as the Panther. But as you saw with mine, gets down to 0.29, which is pretty nice. Armor, none. Just doesn't have any. This thing is like the rest of the line, just eats HE, or HE eats it for breakfast. Not great at all. Hit points are 1,000, which is low. I wonder, it's probably about the lowest medium, I would assume. I have to go through all of them, but it's probably tied at least, if not the lowest. Speed's 60, pretty good. The rest of these things are all relatively quick. A little bit surprised the T20 came in at 56. It doesn't really feel like that, to be honest. And even this KV-13 buzzes around at 50. So when you say it's like, oh, it's got speed in a straight line, kinda. I mean, 5 to 10 is significant, but at the same time, it's not blazing fast. There's that camo. Very nice to have, the best camo. And then the view range is at 370. Not quite as good as some of these. 80, we got 90 on the T20. We got a horrible 360 on the KV-13, but with a little bit of effort with the vision skills on your commander, for both the radio operator and the commander, with running food, running vents, running optics, you can get that spotting range out past the maximum, and then you'll be doing some good work spotting wise for a tier 7 medium that should be a scout, blah blah blah. Now let's go take a look at it again. All right, here we go. We're on Himmel's Cliffdorf. I'm top tier. All right, so that's good. It's always nice to be top tier. Got some 5s to beat up on. A couple other cars in the game here. We got another FSV with us. I'm racing an AEC, kind of keeping up with the 1357, and we're all blasting here towards the middle. This is Cliff. It's one of the maps that has something for everyone except for possibly scouts. On all maps, most maps, nearly all maps, scouts get stronger as they survive later into the game. So even maps that aren't great for initial scout kind of activity, they're okay later on when you can be tricky and outspot things and track down the last few guys. But in this case, I'm able to come up here. I've got nice spotting. This poor guy's trying to get away from me. Unfortunately, he does. And nobody really, initially anyway, comes up to the middle here. I'm fighting the -5 depression just a little bit. I do get spotted, so I've got to back out here. There's a 3002 in the middle, and pretty standard. You know, what can you do at a low tier game like this? It's like a box of chocolates. You get what you get, and you don't fuss a bit. We've got, I don't know what the T150 is doing. I think he does a long end around, maybe trying not to get shot by guys in the middle, which understandable. We've got some campers back here. The Ram 2 is on his way, I guess. We've got a Wolverine. I guess he hasn't moved yet. Maybe he's still sitting there. And then the standard cast of characters over here on the 1-2 column. I don't know. So I will try my level best to control this middle and not let us lose immediately, because we have nobody here doing the JOB. A couple early shots. We'll try to shoot this Sturv. Should be nice. Nope, we'll just miss. Terrible shot. He almost tips over, which wouldn't matter. Actually, I did tip over the other day and saw how the whole thing works with the automatic righting. Worked out okay. I do have to be careful here, because if I get too high and get spotted, and maybe I was spotted the whole time, I don't know. I may eat a shot from their sniper position. I'm sure that M10 RBFM is ready to take a piece. See, there's that depression, like, oh, I needed 1 degree. -6 and I would have got that damage. -10 and it's easy peasy. There are 2 artillery, and so far they have left me alone. We'll see what happens. As I noted with the other 2 tanks, the tier 6 and the tier 5, these things are very vulnerable to artillery. They do move back and forth relatively quickly, so it can be problematic for Artie to hit them, but splash or direct hits, whatever, it's going to hurt this thing. Alright, so the T150 is going around the mountain as she comes. The Sturv is sitting right there. Unfortunately, what he's doing there, hiding behind that, I was really hoping the Artie would kill him, because that's a pretty easy spot to hit for the Artie. What he's managing to do there by sitting in that position while he's not being bombed by Artie is I get proxy lit every time. Now, this thing's ability to climb is kind of terrible. I couldn't even get up and over that soap rock there. Look at this, I'm just stuck. I'm going to have to shift my hole a little bit. There we go. Specific power is relatively low. Not horrible, but relatively low. Okay, someone's clicking back there for the artillery. Got shots going across everywhere. I just don't have the gun depression to go after that 103. We'll take a poke into the bush right there where the TDs kind of sit most of the time. I do need to be somewhat careful with the amount of ammo. It's got a decent amount, but if you do a lot of shooting into bushes like that, and you'll find that with tanks like this one, where you're a sniper, basically, you're trying to be a sniper. You've got a low alpha and a fast reload. You can pretty quickly shoot a significant amount of your ammo into bushes, and then all of a sudden be low on ammo, so do watch for that. HT number 6. Now the HT number 6 and another tank or two, they eventually are going to win that flank. The T-150 goes wide. And the only reason he can really do that is we have the hill. So don't go around on the east side, especially wide on the east side, if the other team owns the hill. It's probably not that wise if the other team has arty. So, yeah, there you go. The HT number 6 just killed the guy. And just like that, we're down 3-5. So I'm thinking about it as I'm watching, or as I'm watching the match go and I'm playing the match. I'm trying to figure out how am I going to do anything with this tank? How do I change our stars right now? Well, the KV-1 and the ARL and the 3001 are holding that flank. And I am now, the spidey senses are coming alive here, and I'm thinking that we may have some customers show up over here. The Sturv looks like he might be trying to push the AMX, and I'm wondering if we're about to see an HT, a VK, and whoever else might be thinking about coming around this corner. We lose our KV-1, so the Type 62 wins that fight. Their FSV is over there, and here we go. This is what I sort of expected to start happening. This spot is vulnerable to artillery, so I'm just waiting for it. Once they kind of know you're there and start paying attention, you're going to have a hard time, and you really need to go dark, or maybe even try to go somewhere else if you can. Because once they start bombing you here, especially if they've got those fast reloads like these little arties do, it can get quite miserable. So the HT number 6 starts to push. I don't want to get hit by this guy. I don't have the depression to poke out. So now, this is what I was talking about earlier. I have to get creative in my positioning so that my -5 gun depression doesn't screw me over. And unfortunately, that forces me to come off of this hill just a little bit. These guys are busy shooting people, so this is going to allow me to come in here. I go to the gold pen. 3002 is looking at me. Already thumps the HT number 6, and I'm like, all right, we need to get this guy dead. Can I do it, or will somebody else? Nope, I missed. He dies. Probably going to eat this shot. No, he missed for a wonder. Fantastic. All right, so we have blunted at least that attack, but that's still a 3002 with 1,000 hit points, right? And this is a great example. That 3002 is a tier 7 medium. Now he's in a good spot, so pushing anybody who's hull down like that in any tank at tier 7 is probably not a great idea, because he's going to be able to come up, take shots at you as you move across the open ground. But because of 0 armor, it's just not really a player for me. Now, someone just thumped him pretty hard, and I was starting to think about it, but he's bailing out of this thing. So I don't want to go tangle with him right now anyway, because I feel like he's going to get the best of me, or at least maul me. So let's hang out here. He's running away, so he's not a factor for the moment. And it looks like we have a much bigger issue over here. So that FSV is going to that little sneaky shot. I've done a video on this probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. I was a little bit surprised he didn't see me, although I might be double bushed based on where he is back in the corner. Once he does push out a little bit, he does see me. So I'm going to back out of that. And we'll just keep on holding on to this middle part. There's the FSV again. See if we can sneak a shot on that guy. There we go. Oh, okay. Shot off to the left. Where is that guy? Hey, good. Right in there. And then he gets away from me. Now I'm starting to wonder where the 3002 went. The Achilles sort of looks for him. Oh, he's going up the hill. Okay. So he's come all the way back. Now he's headed up the hill and he wants to try to take the 1357 out. I'm looking at the situation and I figure I can probably go up there and help the 1357 get rid of the 3002. I'd really like to save the 1357, but he's absolutely mauling this guy and takes him out, which means I don't have to go up the hill anymore. So let's spin back around. The guys on the 1 and 2 column have done good work. They've taken care of those guys. And I'm sitting there with a whole 700 damage. Now here's where the mobility of this thing in terms of speed is nice to have. We're going to speed right off this hill. We'll zing on down here. And now we want to find an M41 HMC, a Hummel, an RBFM, and a Sturv. Well, we kind of know where the RBFM and the Sturv are. More than likely that RBFM has not left that position. I'll go back to the regular AP because that should be plenty for all of these guys. And darn it, didn't find him. There's that, the optics. Oh, I did find him. The guy started moving. That'll be very helpful when he does that. Down he goes. We get a little assist. We get a little extra damage. Thinking about, all right, do I go take on the Sturv or the RBFM? Well, let's take on the Sturv because I'll be protected from the RBFM to some extent. Now with the alpha of this tank, I'm looking at that 328. I know I've got at least 2 shots, probably 3 to get rid of this guy. We just auto aim. He had his turret in the wrong place. Already got me. We'll fix that immediately. That's something I talk about a lot. There we go. Just burn the kit. You want your reload to stay. Shoot that guy. Ah, darn. The RBFM has got his sights on me, so let's make that harder for him to hit us. There we go. Maybe we'll get a shot on him. Nope. Died. And that's it. Unfortunately, I got ammo racked again, and I'd used my kit earlier. 1,299 damage, 805 assists for a decent 2,000 combined, and to kill and to win. That is more or less how I found all the 23 battles, other than the Ace, where I just kind of ran rampant. And that's an interesting battle in and of itself, because it's a similar thing in terms of a very careful game that then went way into my favor. All of my games were kind of like this, just trying to find a place where I can contribute and be effective without sitting in a bush in the back somewhere. And that was tricky. Because I'm naturally a more aggressive player, I like to be up front, and that probably speaks a lot to my survival rate and my losses, actually, because there were plenty of times where I just got overextended, used the thing's speed a little too early, got to positions that maybe a more armored medium could handle, but this one can't. And one of the greatest bummers about that is with this tank, when you talk about, I'm going to go to a forward position and control it, there's a lot of mediums that have an okay turret, and because of the way the maps are designed, there's a lot of hold down positions like that, but you can't use them with this guy. First of all, it's only got -5 gun depression, and second, it has 0 armor on the turret. So that part of gameplay, especially early when shots are more likely to come back your way, isn't really available to this tank unless you want to lose your hit points quickly, and I managed that quite a bit. Let's wrap it up. Alright, so what's the end result? I would say that initially I didn't like it very much. It started to grow on me. I will play it to 100 battles. I was surprised by how well it's doing, at least initially. So that's got me thinking a little bit more, and I have had some significant success with this thing. I've had some really good games with this thing and some extremely bad games, unlike the other ones where it was just pretty average through and through. And I'm quite liking the tier 8 actually so far. So it's going to grow on me even more. It's not a bad tank. I just find that it's a little bit schizophrenic in terms of what its purpose is, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe the uniqueness of this tank is that it is kind of a crappy medium and a weird fast medium, or sorry, a crappy light tank and a weird fast medium with no armor. And if you're a more careful, considered, hang back a bit, sniper kind of person, you might like this quite a bit, because as long as you can stay out of the line of fire, you can zip around the map pretty well. You can get to places you need to be pretty quickly because it's got good speed. So if you need to flex from one side to the other and bring your mighty 150 alpha sniper gun to the fight, then maybe this really is the tank for you. And like all these mobile types of tanks in this game, if you can keep yourself alive the mid to late game, that's where it really starts to come alive, because the nice gun handling, the nice speed, the good camo, the good vision, that's everything you need mid to late game to start making a huge effect. Just be very, very careful early. It's it doesn't do a lot of the medium things that you would want it to do early. It just doesn't have that capability. All right, that's all I've got. Wargaming, could you add about 2 to 3 depression to this, gun depression points to this tank? Because that -5 is really hurting my feelings. That's all I've got. Let me know what you guys think of this tank down below in the comments. We will see ya.